Good evening and welcome to the Thursday workshop, advanced workshop. And this workshop is designed to go into more detail on each of the areas of Zazen method that we train in and teach: posture, the breath, the attention. And then on the fourth Thursday, we get into walking and chanting, some of the peripheral activities around the sitting. And the fifth, the rare fifth Thursday, healing and sleeping, some of the exercises that we have from our ancestors in that regard. So each evening, the first half hour is just a little my sort of instructions or suggestions on the method of Zen. Again, the method is all that we really transmit in Zen. Just as in music, as we often say, you can teach a person the piano, you can't teach them music. So we focus on the method and the ultimate in do-it-yourself. You find the Zen eventually, just as the musician finds the music eventually. So tonight we're focusing on breathing on the second Thursday of the month, and I'd like to walk you through some exercises in this first half hour. First ones are pranayama, which is yogic breathing, sometimes referred to as controlling the breath. In Zen, we like to think of not of controlling the breath, but of following the breath. And if we're looking for the natural breath, we're looking for the breath that the body will naturally breathe if you do not interfere with it. Of course, under different circumstances, it's different. If you're running or working out or doing something vigorous, then the breathing adapts and shifts and changes to meet that condition. When we're sitting in Zazen, you're sitting relatively still, as still as you ever probably sit. And so the demand on the body for breath or oxygen is much less, of course, than when you're walking or when you're running, of course, or any other form of physical activity. But even just driving on the expressway or driving through traffic to get here is kind of a higher anxiety level. So by the time you come into the Zendo here, you're probably palpitating, you're probably breathing at a pretty rapid rate. And so the first thing that you begin to notice is that the breath starts to slow down. And it can, in Zazen, slow down rather dramatically. We don't force it to, but there are points at which you find yourself sitting and not really breathing at all, or not intentionally breathing, just long periods of time when you're not inhaling. And then the body will take a breath, so forth. So I think the sages in India, the yogis, and Buddha was a yogi in the sense that he must have practiced yoga in those days, probably the form of meditation that he was trained in. But we think Zen meditation differed. Zen meditation moved in a different direction from the teaching of the day, yogic meditation. But my poor understanding of history is that they considered trance states to be sort of the highest level of accomplishment. People would go into trance-like states, and a lot of the yogic teachings seem to point in this direction. Raja Yoga, because Raja means royal, something like that, focused around meditation, the transcendent kind of states that can come about through meditation. I practiced Hatha Yoga for maybe a year or more before I ever met Matsuoka Roshi and started practicing Zen. And so I had a little bit of familiarity with Raja Yoga, yogic type meditation, and some of the exercises. So tonight the focus on breathing, pranayama. I think what the sages did, they experienced the natural breath themselves. And so in teaching somebody, they said, it's about like this, proportion your breath. So let's try this. Just inhale for count of four, hold for count of four, exhale for count of four, hold for count of four. It's a very simple form. In, two, three, hold, two, three, four. Out, two, three, four, hold, two, three, 4. In, 2, 3, 4. Hold, 2, 3, 4. Out, 2, 3, 4. Hold, 2, 3, 4. So continue in that way just for a few minutes. Try that. In the 4 count inhaling, inhale as much air as you can. Fill your lungs with air so that your chest expands. You sit upright, lift the ribs off the lungs. And then when you hold, it's like the old days, taking a toke of marijuana, you hold it in and try to get all the smoke. So you didn't waste any of it. Hold it for a while. You feel a little bit lightheaded, holding your breath that hard. And the exhaling, pushing out through the mouth. Inhaling through the nose. Exhaling through the mouth. And move to inhaling for the entire 8 count. And exhaling for the entire 8 count. So if you start feeling a little lightheaded, you're doing it correctly because what you're doing is building the oxygen deficit. You're reconstructing the oxygen in the lungs and the body. You get a little bit of an oxygen high from it. Inhale for the count of 8. If the lungs full, hold for a count of 8. Double the length. Exhale for a double count of 8. We'll do this a few times. And at the end of the 8 count exhale, hold the breath out. Holding the breath out to do another count of 8 if you want. Well, again, what I think the old masters did is they discovered this slower breath pattern and they taught it as a proportion kind of breath. But again, in Zen, we're looking for the natural pattern, so we encourage you to experiment with the breath in that way. Pay attention to where you find resistance, if it's getting a little dizzy from it, or if you are bothering you a little bit to hold your breath for that long. This is your body sending you signals. You're taking over something that it will do naturally, so it may wonder why you're doing that. But the only reason you're doing this is an experiment to see for yourself where the natural breath may lie. Let's do a cleansing breath version of this. This time you inhale fully as much as you can, fill the lungs, and then blow out through the mouth and make the tiniest hole possible without whistling. You find you make a little noise, but you find it takes longer to blow the breath, to empty the lungs, tiny hole in the mouth. Cleansing breath. The theory behind this is that the pushing the breath hard through a small hole in the mouth creates turbulence in the lungs. It helps to cleanse the lungs. Whether that actually works or not, I have no idea. If you have a YMCA or a club you go to and they have a steam room, you try these exercises in the steam room. You're adding the element of steam going in and out of the lungs. This time, after the full inhalation, instead of holding the breath forcefully, just do not exhale. And gradually see when the body starts to do the exhalation itself. At the end of the long inhale, just wait instead of exhaling. Wait and observe. Then the long exhale. At the end of the long exhale, just wait and observe, not forcefully holding it out, just letting it rest. So you can add an arm motion from Tai Chi, put your hands above your head. As the arms come down, pull up, inhale, pushing down, exhaling. Inhale, exhale. Now pause and just let your body do the breathing. Pay attention, see what happens. There's one school of meditation where they focus on the breath so much they ask you, when you fell asleep last night, were you inhaling or exhaling? When you woke up this morning, were you inhaling or exhaling? As we Hakuin's Nakan Tanden, as I mentioned, you find that at the end of a long exhalation is when you lose consciousness. But you don't really have to inhale, the body will inhale. So we generally focus our attention on the exhalation. Part of the Metta Sutta kind of idea of loving kindness and compassion for all is like we envision exhaling good vibes, good wishes. May all beings be happy. With the exhalation, we're sending out into the world. It's just a kind. It's not exactly self-hypnosis, but it's a kind of self-training. We don't behave in a spooky action at a distance or magical thinking. It's just a way of conceiving of it. Or as Matsuo Kuroshi said, being cookie or inhale, exhale in Japanese The inhalation is filling the lungs with fresh oxygen, which the body needs for energy, thermal healing, and so forth. Exhaling is exhaling all the impurities out of the body. So these kinds of visualizations, there's nothing wrong with them. They can help you develop a different attitude adjustment toward your own observation of your own breathing. Let's try a little more complicated one. This is the one I discovered when I was recovering from COVID, as I mentioned before. In this one, we take a long inhale, hold it for a count of 8. Now, I'll count this off, but I'm actually counting my heartbeat. So my heartbeat may go slower or faster than yours. You want to adapt this to your own tempo. Think of your heartbeat as your metronome. And if you start feeling it, you can let it start guiding the counting of the breath as a portioning of the breath. This that we're doing now is more along the lines of pranayama. It's not counting the breath in the sense that it's usually taught in Zen. So again, a long inhalation, count of 8, in, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, out. And call that 9, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, in, out, 8, 2. You're going counting down backwards. So we're going from 9 down to 0 overall. But with each breath, the inhalation, we hold for 8, and we exhale. That is, the first one is called 9. So we're going to go from 9 down to 0. First exhale is 9. So inhale, hold for count of 8, 9. Push out, push out, push out. Inhale, 8. Inhale, 7. Inhale, 6. Inhale, 5. Inhale, 4. Inhale, 3. Inhale, 2. Inhale, 1. Inhale, 0. And hold. And the next one, inhale and hold for count of 8. Inhale, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So go through this silently and I will stop saying out loud. So the first inhale is a hold of 8, oxygenating. The out breath is 9. Second inhale is normal. The out breath is 8. Third inhale, normal inhale. Out breath is 7. Until you come down to 0. And then stop and hold. And then take big deep breath. Hold for count of 8. Lungs full. and 9, the exhalation. 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. So counting down. Okay, let's try this first one. I'm counting my heartbeat, as I said, so your count may be faster or slower. You might want to use the hand gestures, pulling up for inhaling, pushing down for exhale. This is an exaggerated form of that when you're doing high keys. For me, the exhalation is also a count of 8, 8 heartbeats. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. For you, may be slightly different. Again, inhaling through the nose, exhale through the mouth. Eyes closed, eyes open. Try both. You might inhale with the eyes closed, exhale with the eyes open, vice versa. You feel a tingling in your hands, that's normal. You're feeling your pulse for one thing, getting more oxygen to the extremities. It feels like warm sometimes. Kind of called a key, life force energy. You might want to bring the rocking motion into it, walking in rhythm with the breath. Just try this for another 5 minutes, just on your own. If you close your eyes, you can feel the proprioception a little better. Try to clearing out your lung. Good that you call. stirring up some of the what you. For me, the inhalation goes most naturally with the rocking backward, inhaling, rocking backward, exhaling, rocking forward, compressing lungs, the diaphragm closing down as you move forward. If you notice people grieving, crying, and so forth, they'll be rocking like that, crying and screaming or, crying out loud. And so the rocking motion, the breath is very much tied into our emotions. Diaphragm, hara, this area of the stomach, seat of emotions here. You feel grief, you feel pain, you feel cold, you feel anxiety. So this is a little bit like extending the abdominal breathing, the fluctuation of the diaphragm to the whole body, so the body is resonating in response with it. When you're inhaling, uh, let your throat soften, start opening up your mouth more like a yawning. If I yawn, you hear me yawning. It's contagious, right? It makes you yawn. You want to full breath, especially on the inhalation, where you take a very deep breath, very big breath, filling your mouth and lungs, and the yawning impulse sets in. Stretching your jaw with the yawn. Deep breath. Open the mouth. Good. And others do, but they claim that the bottom of the lungs, you tend to palpitate and breathe in the upper half of the lung chamber. Not that there's any medical proof of this, but the idea here is that breath starts penetrating to the lower part of the lungs, which are down past the rib cage, getting into the diaphragm area. And so it starts cleaning out stagnant, accumulated material, oxygen, air, whatever in the bottom. So you get the full deep breath and you begin to feel the energy of the oxygen throughout the body, filling you with energy. If it's true that we palpitate and we don't use the full capacity of the lungs on a regular basis, or on a daily basis, then you could theorize that we're always operating at an oxygen deficit. That's why every once in a while I think we're surprised when we're caught with a big yawn or a big deep breath. All of a sudden we didn't know we were out of breath, but we were, at least to a degree. So if you carry this exercise to extremes in your meditation, then you'll probably bounce back to the middle. It's a well-known doctrine of the mean that you have to go to the extreme in order to come back to the mean. So yogic aerobic exercises are that kind of almost shamanic practice, pushing it to an extreme. So, for instance, just running until you drop from exhaustion, then your body takes over and does the breathing or refills the oxygen and so forth. Or dancing until you drop from exhaustion, those kind of shamanistic practices. Sitting in, what they call it, sweat hut, in the oh, sweat lodge, and even a steam room in this extreme. Putting yourself through the extreme so that the body can adapt to that, adjust, and then come back to the middle. And when you're going through your everyday life, driving your car, etc., motor muscle memory starts to set in. So that you start breathing deeper, you're breathing more fully. And It's tied into anxiety. It's tied into mindfulness. It's tied into all of the so-called suspected benefits of its practice. So while that then stresses the middle way, we recognize that you can't find the middle until you go beyond it, and you have to come back to it. Again, like tuning a guitar string, you have to go high, low, come back to the middle. All right. So we're at the half-hour mark now. And what we'll do now is break for a minute if you want to take a restroom break or a stretch. Then we'll go sit in the perimeter facing the wall. I will ask you to construct your own breathing exercise, tying it to the posture, the rocking motion, and so forth. And then afterwards, we'll report out on what we tried, what we did. So think of it as an experiment, exploratory.
I have a question.
Again, there's no right way to do this. So we're not making it up as we go along. We have 2,500 years of method.
When you take a full breath in, are you letting your shoulders move up, or do you keep them down?
Yeah, I would think they would go up. But I mostly experience my chest expanding outward. If you pull back on they say when you're walking, for instance, you pump your arms to get your heartbeat going. You should visualize a cable attached to your sternum here, and it's pulling you forward. So this part is up and off the lungs. The pigtail, the idea of the pigtail, and you have to have a ponytail pulled up to the ceiling is the other kind of idea, stretching the neck as if you're hanging like a marionette on a string. It's kind of reversing our concept of gravity. You think plunk, we're glued to the ground. But this idea is no, you're kind of floating in space. So you look for that central axis. The same thing with the breathing. You want to find the sweet spot in the middle of the posture, which comes into equilibrium. That frees up the whole system for deep breathing.
I find when I start trying to deep breathe, it almost feels like there's like a rock in between my shoulders that feels like it's pushing down.
But there's certainly a connection there. There's certainly a tissue connection there. Remember, you were a trombone player. Mm-hmm. You had to breathe. You had to learn to breathe.
Sure.
Did you ever learn cyclic breathing?
I never got that. I know of it though.
Yeah. Do you guys know what that is? Like a saxophone player doesn't ever have to stop playing. They learn circular breath, which is you inhale while you're blowing the saxophone. You're inhaling at the same time. It's hard to imagine that you could do that.
They fill their mouth up, right? They use their mouth. Is that what they do?
Yeah, so the mouth is holding the breath they're using, and they close that, and then they inhale through the nose and fill it again. It's like a bagpipe, squeezing the air out of a bagpipe. Okay, we ready? So let's find a spot around the perimeter, facing the wall. Let's time this for 25 minutes, roughly. I want you to invent your own approach to this.
You can line up.
Sure, yes. You might flip the ceiling fans on to get a little circulation going. Another little dictation on this, again, recapping a little bit. Counting the breath in Zazen, the instructions are usually to find a simple way that is not too distracting, not too much of an exercise. The exercises we just went through are very much too complicated for Zazen. So don't think of this period as Zazen. This period is breathing. This period is focusing on the breath. So it's a special use of the period. Zazen, we recommend following the breath, counting the breath as skillful or expedient means. And because that's what they are, they're not meant to be permanent practices. What would be the expediency of having you count your breath for the rest of your life? There would be no expediency about that. So counting the breath is a way of focusing our attention on the breath, which, as we all know, monkey mind tends to wander and get easily distracted. So counting is something we learn to do when we're 2, 3 years old. In India, everything is enumerated in the teachings, 8 of this, 4 of that, 12 of that, 52 of that, and so forth. It's a mnemonic, and we use it as a skillful or expedient means, but we don't rely on it, and there's nothing magical about it. It's just a practical way focusing the attention on the breath by counting. You don't mind, I'm going to turn the air off. I think it's cool enough in here. And we'll have a more quiet period. While we're doing this exercise, we're not ignoring our other senses, we're not ignoring hearing, seeing, body sensation. But we are directing our attention to a purposeful mental activity. And again, in Zen, we do not overstress this. We recommend simplifying it so that it performs its function of simply allowing you to focus on the breath. As I mentioned, when I was going through recovery, I had to take some extreme measures just to be able to get my strength back and so forth. So if we think of it as expedient means, it means it's temporary. As Buddha said, when you reach the other shore, you don't continue carrying the raft with you. You leave the raft behind. So all of his teachings were meant to be provisional, expedient. And of course, one of the weaknesses we have is to latch onto these teachings as if that's the secret somehow. But the teachings are just showing us how to do something through the means of which we will get to the same level or kind of experience that Buddha and the ancestors had. So the map and the territory is another example. They trailblazed a lot of the original frontier, you could say, left us some maps and so forth, but the map is not the territory, and at some point you have to abandon the map. So counting is like that, counting the breath. So I encourage you to be innovative, see what works for you. You may not even need to count the breath, but if you're taking the curriculum of this course, we're kind of forcing ourselves to do something that we essentially know we don't have to do. You don't have to do Zazen, according to Bodhidharma, with the purpose of finding out the natural breath, finding out the natural approach to this. So we can allow ourselves, give ourselves the right to be wrong, that is, to do Zazen wrong by enforcing this process on it, so that we can see how it is and why it is that we don't need to do that. So for this period, I'd like you to exert that discipline upon yourself, just putting yourself through the process of counting the breath, observing the breath, of course, pushing the breath to an extreme, again, so that eventually you can come back to the middle, and tying it into the posture, tying it into the rocking motion, so that we're kind of forcing the posture and the breath and the attention all to be unified in this effort. Matsuoka Roshi said the real Zazen is when posture, breath, and attention all come together in a unified way. Well, we don't know what that means until it happens. So here we're forcing it to be unified through this process of counting, proportioning the breath, paying extreme attention to the breath, and so forth, as a single pointed kind of exercise, which is much more of a yogic or hypnotic kind of process than Zazen. We're forcing ourselves to focus our attention very sharply on a limited dimension of Zazen. Eventually, shikantaza means objectless meditation, so it's very difficult to say that your attention is focused on anything other than everything. So with that context in mind, please begin, proceed, and then afterwards we'll talk about your experience. One question you might want to ask yourself, you can feel your breath, but can you see it? Can you hear it? Like I mentioned in one of the early teachings, says the breath sounds like hung sa. Hung is the inhalation, sa is the exhalation. Hung sa. Maybe you're here. What you came up with, what you experienced, or what you picked up tonight, period.
Yes, sir. So I did the 4 and hold 4, out 4, hold out 4. I tried doing the rocking motion, which I drifted in and out of doing, but I kind of tried to do it like a tempo. That makes sense.
Like a metronome.
Yeah, because one thing I noticed initially, I was trying to do my heartbeat as the tempo, and I noticed that on the exhale, my heart slowed down to the point where I couldn't even really feel it anymore.
Hmm.
And then when I inhaled, I could feel it, but it would be pretty fast. I guess that's because like the pressure, maybe, in my lungs against the heart.
I'm not sure. I think the accumulation at first when we come in off the street, we have an oxygen deficit, and so your heart is pumping to make up that oxygen deficit. And if you're not breathing very deeply, it has to work even harder because it's dealing with less oxygen. But if you start breathing deeply, then you're giving it more oxygen, so it doesn't have to work as hard.
Hmm.
So I doubt that our heartbeat is regular ever. Like we were talking about in music, nobody's ever really on the beat.
Yeah.
Everybody's all around the beat.
Yeah.
It would be almost impossible for two musicians to be on the beat at the same time.
Hmm.
It would be a coincidence.
Hmm.
One metaphor we use is the windshield wipers and your directional signals. If you're driving in the rain, you turn on your directional signals. They're going at two different tempos. Right? Every once in a while they hit together, but this one is doing its own thing, and this one is doing its own thing. There's a term for that in music, but I don't know what it is. Not exactly counterpoint. There's a term for how they finally come around and synchronize, and then
Phasing? Phasing?
probably something like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's what's going on in our bodies, like a polyrhythm, all these pulses and chemicals and everything going on. All different frequencies, every once in a while harmonious. And I think it does tie it in because in one of the poems it says, so minute it enters where there is no gap, so vast it transcends dimension, but a hair-breadth deviation and you are out of tune. Sort of like we're tuning back in here. Anything else?
Um, I had some pretty weird like visualizations. But they came and went. I don't remember any of them, but I remember at one point I was like, "What's happening?" You know?
Right. Yeah. As I was in the whirlpool to the Y, and that thing filled my entire field of vision. So there wasn't anything static in the entire field of vision. It was just this whirlpool rush of everything going on. And I think that's what the brain is receiving. Basically, a psychedelic experience. I mean, cutting down all those filters and it just comes flowing in, all the sensory data. And your brain has to sort it all out. It's just like visual cortex, audio cortex, and so forth. But so I think what happens is those doors start opening up. And because you're focusing so intently on the breath, you're not controlling your vision anymore, or you're not controlling hearing. Suddenly you might hear something that you have been hearing all along, but you didn't know you were hearing it. Or you might see something, movement, light, color, and so forth.
Yeah, it's kind of weird, but I like saw my nose. Like really saw it.
There are two of them. There's one here,
Yeah.
one there.
Yeah. It's like, I don't know, it was like kind of like surreal. I was like, whoa. But
I think that's what they mean by the third eye. The third eye is the eye that sees the other two.
In the nose. In the nose.
In the nose. I use this expression between the noses. Between the noses is the three-dimensional, binocular vision. Outside the right nose is two-dimensional, and outside the left nose is two-dimensional. But the brain photoshops it all together as if it's continuous. That starts breaking down, and you see that division into three fields very clearly. There's all kinds of visual experiences that occur, but they're all based on something real. It's not like I think Zen holds that there's no such thing actually as a hallucination.
mm-hmm.
You can be schizophrenic, you can be chemically imbalanced, you can have those kinds of hallucinations. But in terms of sensory experience, it's all coming from a real source.
Mm.
Or we're seeing what the brain sees before it sorts it all out. Say it that way.
One last thing, I did like the breath sensation. I think because I was focusing on it so intently, it was sort of like painful at times, but also eventually that wasn't pain. It was just like a sensation.
Was there a locus of the pain somewhere?
Again, it's like between, it's like, it feels like there's like a rod between
Yeah.
my,
You probably need to stick more.
yeah.
But pain we think of, I think, in Zen mostly as resistance. If you think about it, if you're suffocating, it hurts, right? If you can't get your breath, it hurts. And feels like your chest is on fire, all those kind of descriptions that people have. Our senior guy in Birmingham, Alabama, he gets so hung up if he focuses on the breath. He can't breathe, he panics because it's as if you can't breathe. You know, you just start suffocating. Oh, don't mess with it. Leave it alone. Right? Don't even think about it. So if you focus too heavily on something, it can become kind of obsessive.
Mhm.
Okay, who wants to go next? Anything to report?
I had more lung capacity. I could do all these exercises to develop more lung capacity.
I think you will develop more lung capacity. It's going to be a painful thing.
I heard sometime in the last week, somebody said that the lungs heal themselves faster than any other organ.
Yep, they clean themselves
You might have said
quicker than any organ. Yeah. And Ian, I'd recommend if you get to Hawaii, get in a steam room somewhere. Try that.
It seems like the
Take a spittoon with you.
craving of the cigarette addiction is not as big of a problem as just the memory. You just don't remember not to. You know, I'm just doing what I'm used to doing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I don't know what else to say.
The Native Americans smoked tobacco, tabak it's called, but you know, they didn't. Now, obviously, they weren't treating it with arsenic or anything. So,
They would sit in a tent and do it.
yeah,
So
that's the peace pipe, you know. So, Nate, anything?
so. I was just kind of experimenting with different counts on the breath in and the breath out, and I started with the 8 count on the intake, and just a pause,
Mhm.
and I was coming back through that exercise that you started with the 8 exhale and then the 7 exhale, and then sequence all the way down to 1. And then after that, um, I went to a 7 count intake
Mhm.
and then 7
Mhm.
count exhale with the sequence back down to 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And then and following, and then after that is a 6 count intake down to 4 just to establish a range,
Yeah, yeah.
to try to get an understanding of, or just develop for myself an idea of where my natural
Mhm.
breath is.
Mhm.
And so in doing breathing exercises here, it's a little, I do have some experience, just from other types of activities that I've done that require breathing, and different things that, over the years, athletics, swimming, running,
Yeah, yeah.
distance running particularly. Um, for me, I think the natural breath in sitting is very different than it is in other activities.
Sure.
So I was settling in more around 6-ish, 6 or 5. But I think one of the interesting observations that I have is that while I was counting, counting made the time go much faster. And I don't normally count or do anything like that when I'm
There's a little preoccupation for
other experiences.
the monkey, I find 4s and 8s more natural than 5s and 10s. For instance, people count, we don't actually have 10 digits, we have 8 digits and two opposing thumbs. And there's so many 4s in everything in nature and math and science and so forth. It just seems like 4s and 8s are more natural than 10s, for me anyway. And my breath seems to be happiest when it's like inhaling for 4 beats and exhaling for 4 beats and just sort of keep that pattern going. But then every once in a while it just slows down to complete stop. And that's when it seems to be most peaceful. Like not even trying to breathe, not even worrying about breathing. Breathing may happen, but I'm not doing anything about it. So it's like a sigh of relief, it's like putting something down, letting something go that you don't need to be messing with. I once did a calculation, did the math. When I started doing the 9 to 0 count, not 9 to 1, but 9 to 0, that's 10. I found that my natural cycle of breath is about, what was it? I correctly measured something like how many for 5 minutes. Two of those rounds of 10 come up to about 5 minutes. And so if I did 20, that would be a two of those rounds being 5 minutes. Pardon me?
20 would be 50 minutes.
Yeah, so it got to the point that I could tell when the bell was going to ring because I'm down on 25 now, 25 minutes ready to go. When I go get my vitals checked for physicals and things like that, they're always remarking, the doctors, that my heartbeat is so slow. It's very slow, but it's very steady. And my breathing is very slow. My blood pressure is very low. I think it's just because of the way you start experiencing, your heart actually starts slowing down with the breath. They're synchronized. And it's a squeeze, relax, squeeze, relax. So every time your heart muscle has to do that, squeeze, relax, of course, if running in high races, you're pumping it up a lot, so your heart is building strength. They say athletes have actually a larger heart. It pumps more blood more efficiently than most people's. That's why you can do 4-minute miles and things like that. But as your breath slows down, your heartbeat slows down, your heart is relaxing more of the time than it is making an effort. So it's going to improve your chances for longevity, for one thing. But in Zen, the only value of longevity is it gives you a better chance to wake up.
It would be nice not to give a damn about more oxygen, but when I need it, I do give a damn.
It's, as I said before, I give a series of lectures on addiction. From Zen's perspective, it's all addiction. Addictive substance is defined by the AMA as being such that if you remove it from the addict, it causes a significant degree of discomfort. Well, you can apply that to air, oxygen, right? It takes about 5 minutes and you're either brain damaged or dead. Water, takes maybe a week, 2 weeks. It depends on the circumstance. Food, it takes maybe a month or 2 months.
Brain damaged or dead is not a problem, though. And it happens all the time.
Not for you, maybe for your
It
friends.
certainly will.
But if you apply that definition, everything is like an addictive substance. We're addicted to oxygen. We're addicted to water. We're addicted to food. Life is an addiction. Or anything else? Good. Thanks for being here.